On the day of our honeymoon departure, he presented divorce papers before me.
I'm taking my whole family with me. If you don't like it, we'll get divorced.
Fine, but I'm still single, you know.
Huh?
I screamed in my mind as he stood there dumbfounded. Take that! My name is Emma, 35 years old, and I work at a real estate company. I enjoy my work and find it fulfilling, and I have been fortunate to have supportive seniors and juniors. On the other hand, my personal life lacks any particular hobbies, and I have never had a boyfriend. I secretly felt anxious. My friends were getting married one after another, reaching their peak at 30. There are only a few of us who are still single. My juniors also left the company one after another, and each time it felt like a stab in the chest. That's when I met Brian through a friend's introduction. He was 2 years younger and had a smile that tickled my maternal instincts. He spoke few words and always listened to my opinion when making decisions. He always prioritized my thoughts. Never having any experience with men before, I quickly fell for Brian's personality. Our relationship developed smoothly. When I mentioned marriage, he responded,
"Then let's get married."
When it comes to marriage, a dozen of decisions must be made. Wedding ceremony, honeymoon, and a new home to live in together. It's a once-in-a-lifetime major event, so I wanted to make decisions together. But no matter what we decided, he would always listen to my opinion. He wouldn't express his own opinion, just agreeing with me. Brian's personality felt a bit unreliable, and I started to feel dissatisfied with him. There is another thing that troubles me. It's my relationship with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law's personality was completely different from Brian's easygoing nature. She doesn't listen to my opinions and immediately imposes her own ideas. Emma, when you get married, of course you'll quit your job and focus on taking care of the house, right? At your age, if you don't hurry, you won't be able to have children. Brian is working hard, so as a woman, you should focus on the family. It's the wife's duty to support her husband. When I went to greet her, these were the first words she directed at me. The husband works outside, and the wife takes care of the home. She still holds on to such old-fashioned ideas. The truth is, I earn more money than Brian. He doesn't seem to think much about it and has even told his parents about it. But his mother doesn't seem to like it. A woman who earns more than a man doesn't have any charm. Maybe you can't do any household chores, can you? A wife should be able to cook, do laundry, clean, and take care of her husband's health. Can you do that? My mother-in-law said, looking down on me. If it were Brian saying that, it would be one thing, but isn't it different when it's my mother-in-law? It's not something to brag about, but I can manage all household chores since I've been living alone for a long time. And I have no intention of quitting my job after marriage, and I want to prioritize myself as much as Brian. That's what I thought. But Brian didn't help me even when my mother-in-law criticized me. Instead of refuting my mother-in-law, he nodded along with her statements. Because of that, I felt a bit uneasy about Brian. Can I really rely on someone like this for the rest of my life? Well, Brian is younger than me after all. Maybe he'll become more reliable in the future. If this marriage falls through, I might never get married in my life. Anxiety and desires clashed in my mind, swirling around in endless conflict. However, time doesn't wait, even if I'm troubled. There are so many things I need to decide for the wedding, the destination for the honeymoon, applying for time off from work, and so on. The to-do list keeps piling up. With a sense of unease, I spent busy days preparing for both work and marriage. One day, I consulted Brian. I think, considering our work, we can only take a long vacation at this time, so is it okay to have the honeymoon during this period?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Both Brian and I have similar quiet periods at work. If we want to take a long vacation, this is the only timing we have. The problem is the wedding. The venue I've always dreamed of is so popular that it's booked for over a year in advance. In that case, what about going on the honeymoon before the wedding? I looked it up and it seems some people do that. If we have the wedding first, it will be another 2 years before we can go on the trip.
If you are okay with that, Emma, then I'm fine with it too.
I thought Brian wouldn't object, but to agree so readily. At this rate, it seems like all my opinions will be accepted for the honeymoon destination, the menu for the wedding, and the decoration of the venue. I do have a desire for Brian to express his own opinions a little, but it's better than being opposed. So, whenever I found a moment, I continued to progress with the preparations for the honeymoon and the wedding. In the end, we decided to go to Europe for the honeymoon. I debated until the last minute between Hawaii and Europe, but Hawaii is close by, and I'm sure there will be another opportunity to go there. So I chose to take a trip around Italy and France, experiencing the picturesque streets and delicious cuisine. I also wanted to explore the stylish accessories and maybe buy some commemorative tableware since it's the start of a new life. After considering various schedules and destinations, I completed the application about a month before the tour. By that time, I was completely excited. After all, it's my first overseas trip. It's impossible not to feel thrilled. My mind became filled with everything related to Europe, from buying the necessary items for the trip to planning our activities at the destination. Because of that, any dissatisfaction I had with Brian had completely disappeared. As the honeymoon approached 1 week away, Brian suddenly brought up a conversation.
Emma, I have a favor to ask.
A favor? That's unusual. I wonder what it could be. It's rare for Brian to ask me for something. Could it be about the trip? Did he find a place he wants to visit? What is it? What's wrong? I asked, filled with anticipation, and he innocently made the request.
I want to go to Champs-Élysées when we're in Paris. Mom really wants to go there.
What? My mother-in-law? Wait a minute, what do you mean? I couldn't catch up with this sudden situation, but Brian replied as if it were obvious.
Huh? Since everyone is going, we'll all be together even during the trip, right?
What do you mean by everyone? It's a honeymoon, so it's obvious that it's just me and you, the two of us going.
But my mom thinks it's normal for the whole family to go.
First of all, I only made reservations for 2 people, you and me, Brian. The tour deadline was 7 days ago, so today is the last day to register. Regardless of whether we go together or not, I only booked for 2 people, so there's no way we can go.
If you ask the travel agency, they can figure something out.
As I was dumbfounded by his statement, the intercom in the house rang. On the intercom screen, I saw the figure of my in-laws. Without caring about my surprise, my in-laws entered the house carrying a large number of bags. Ignoring my objections, my mother-in-law's eyes sparkled as she announced, "I thought I'd leave the luggage here since we are leaving soon. I'm so excited." Then Brian said,
"Just leave the luggage here,"
and started leading my in-laws into the room without my consent. "Wait a minute!" I tried to stop him in a hurry, but my mother-in-law stared at me sharply. "Oh, what is it, Emma? I hope you're not suddenly saying, I don't want to go together now." I didn't agree to go together in the first place. I immediately retorted, but my mother-in-law paid no attention, saying, "You heard it just now, didn't you? But Brian always thought we would go together with you, right?" In response to my mother-in-law's flattering question, Brian replied with a simple,
"Yeah."
Taking advantage of his affirmation, my mother-in-law began to deny me. "It's normal for the husband's parents to go on the honeymoon. Don't you have such common sense? I hope you won't have any unpleasant experiences during the trip being with you. Since it's a special honeymoon, we want to make good memories, right? I'll make sure to drill common sense into you during this week before we go on the trip." It's supposed to be a special honeymoon? Drilling common sense into me? It felt like everything was being ruined. I clearly felt my blood boiling. "Mother-in-law, this is a honeymoon, you know? Normally, it's supposed to be just the husband and wife going, right? I desperately held my ground. If I continued to listen to my mother-in-law's side, it would affect the future. I wanted to avoid that at all costs. However, my mother-in-law stubbornly refused to compromise. Not only that, she started to deny me. The husband's parents are supposed to go on the honeymoon together. It's just common sense. I can't believe you dislike being with us. I thought we would become a family, but our common sense is different. You don't like me and nothing seems to match. How sad. As if she had been hurt herself, my mother-in-law lowered her eyebrows in an artificial manner. The end of her words, "how sad," contained an underlying smirk. I was convinced that she was deliberately trying to trap me. That's how certain I was. Even Brian, without questioning, began to blame me based on my mother-in-law's words.
Emma, what the hell? They're my parents. It's okay to go on a honeymoon together, isn't it?
It's impossible. We've already made the reservations for 2 people. Besides, I've never heard of families accompanying a honeymoon trip, I declared, and Brian shouted angrily, as if picking a fight.
I never thought you hated my parents so much, Emma. That's it. Just leave for today.
He looked at me as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. As Brian spoke, a wicked smile formed on my mother-in-law's face. Why does he always take his mother's side without listening to his spouse's opinion? Especially at a time like this, I wanted him to support my views. Before I could even react to his words, I found myself pushed out to the entrance. Just before the door closed, I caught a glimpse of my mother-in-law's smug expression. I was left outside, unable to do anything but stand there. Why am I being treated like the bad guy? Why does everything have to be ruined, including this precious trip? Frustration and sadness overwhelmed me, and tears began to flow. A few hours later, I received a message from Brian.
I want you to see if it's still possible for them to join the tour. If not, we'll cancel this trip and apply for a tour where all 4 of us can go. Please think rationally. If you reconsider, we can figure it out properly.
I don't think I'm in the wrong, so I have no reason to apologize or respond. Brian must be angry too, because there was no contact after that message. Time passed, and the day of our honeymoon departure finally arrived. I couldn't imagine enjoying it in this state, but we had been preparing for this honeymoon for a month. I couldn't refuse. As I prepared to leave the house with a heavy heart, the intercom rang. Brian had come to pick me up. We hadn't seen each other since that incident, so I didn't know what kind of face to put on. The fact that he came to pick me up meant that he still intended to go on the trip. But he didn't have a single suitcase with him. Instead, he handed me a divorce paper.
After hurting my parents, you still intended to go on this trip, didn't you? I'm taking my entire family on this honeymoon. If you don't like it, let's get a divorce. My mom said it would be better that way.
Saying that, he thrust the divorce paper in front of me. In that moment, I finally realized what kind of person he was. I thought he would listen to my opinions and prioritize me, that he was kind. But that wasn't the case. This man is just someone without his own opinions, and he prioritizes his family over me. That's Brian. As I came to that realization, I felt my feelings for him cooling down. Even if I were to marry him, I couldn't see myself overcoming the many challenges that awaited us in the future. And becoming a family with that mother-in-law, it was an impossible scenario. Determined, I pointed at the divorce paper in front of me and said, "Sure, but I'm still single, you know."
Huh?
Brian exclaimed, clearly surprised by my words.
Single? What do you mean?
Weren't you listening? We talked about going on the honeymoon, but delaying the registration until the day of the ceremony. I made sure to get your permission, Brian, you know. You didn't forget, did you? The marriage certificate is still in the drawer, and you even said,
"If you are fine with it, Emma, then I'm fine too."
That's right. Divorce or not, we're not even married yet. There's no problem with going on the honeymoon with my maiden name. Perhaps you remembered my words as Brian's expression suddenly changed. But immediately, he turned red and raised his voice in frustration.
Are you out of your mind? To give up on marriage just because of a honeymoon? Get a grip.
I responded, matching Brian's intensity with my own strong voice. This is the result of me being rational. I've been so desperate to get married that I couldn't see reality clearly. I don't think I can be happy marrying someone who doesn't listen to the opinions of their future spouse and doesn't support them. I'd rather stay single for life. Thanks for making me think that way. Haste makes waste. I keenly felt that this saying was true.
Hey, Emma, let's calm down and start over from scratch, okay?
He looked like he was about to cry. His pleading voice trembled. But I won't be fooled anymore. I will break free from this guy. Without realizing it, I found myself shouting loudly at Brian. If you're so desperate for a family trip, why don't you go with your family of 3? But in return, you'll have to plan everything, from the tour reservations to the itinerary, all by yourself. After always relying on others, it's about time you experience the difficulty yourself. If you think you can handle it, go ahead, you indecisive man. I pulled out the marriage certificate from the drawer and tore it to shreds in front of Brian. In response to this sudden turn of events, his mouth was left hanging open. Overwhelmed by my determination, Brian was completely taken aback. Well, do you understand how serious I am now? I refuse to have a future that's pitch black. It's over between you and me. Why don't you hurry back to your beloved mommy and cry to her, you mama's boy? Leaving a dumbfounded Brian behind, I slammed the front door shut. Given his state, he might actually go cry to his mother. I could easily imagine him doing that. Afterward, I contacted the tour company to cancel our reservations. Since it was a same-day cancellation, we were charged 100% of the cancellation fee. I billed Brian for the entire fee since he was the one who ruined our honeymoon. It was the natural outcome. Later, Brian blamed me for the failed marriage and spread rumors about it to those around us. However, it seemed that no one sympathized with him among our relatives and coworkers. Instead, he started to be seen as an unconventional mama's boy due to his past actions and was disliked by many. When I told my parents about the divorce, they were initially surprised, but quickly accepted it. Marriage isn't the only source of happiness. As long as you're happy, Emma, that's what matters. I couldn't be more grateful for my mother's words. As a side note, since then, my hobby has become traveling. I felt it would be a waste to let long vacations go to waste, so I embarked on my first solo trip. Going overseas was a bit difficult, but I enjoyed a relaxing time in historic cities I had always wanted to visit. Wow, being alone is actually quite enjoyable. Thanks to that historical adventure trip, I've started to fully enjoy solo traveling whenever I have time off. On my next break, I'm planning to embark on my next overseas trip. I've begun a life where I won't let myself be controlled by marriage alone.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? Alright, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.